Welcome to BatShit, a frank and funny look at living with mental illness.
While we'll touch on several illnesses, BatShit is focused on those along the spectrum of bipolar disorders. I'm your host, Adam.
And I'm your other host, Brad.
And we're both bipolar. So strap in and let's see how batshit we really are.
Spoiler alert, pretty damn batshit. This episode's topic, masculinity.
Yeah, super masculine. Yeah, masculine.
Yeah.
That's what I've always been known for, is how masculine I am.
That's why I grew a handlebar mustache for this episode.
It looks real good on you.
Really?
It
You
looks
like it?
real good
Yeah.
on you, buddy.
Yeah.
I've always said that facial hair is something you needed more of.
I just have to be careful when I eat soup.
They call it like a soup catcher, right? Or like a soup strainer or
something like that. So, masculinity.
Masculinity. I have never been considered masculine where I'm from, ever. I don't know if that's because I got into musical theater early on, or maybe it was because I was into dance or singing. I don't know, but like being masculine was prevalent to me because I wasn't considered masculine for a very long time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I felt like it was almost important to do.
Yeah, it was kind of this unachievable goal.
Right.
That you were rushing for it.
Right.
Yeah, I grew up in an area, East Tennessee, where you were routinely told you were gay for reading a book.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Very, very anti-intellectual area. Didn't grow up with a father around. My dad was in prison. And it was kind of the same thing. It was something that I wasn't taught as a kid. Had no real role models for as a kid, and had to learn it on my own.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it, right? And I feel like a lot of guys go through that. Mental illness aside, I think our concepts of masculinity are built around what we observe in media, or what we observe in life. Like I think it's nurture more than nature nowadays.
Yeah, completely. I mean, you have the nature element. You have these impulses, these drives,
right?
Testosterone, etc. But yeah, we learn how to channel those things by what we're surrounded by.
Right. And that just leads into where bipolar plays a really interesting part in all this, right? Because we've talked about before, impulse control is extremely difficult, right? And something that you have to learn how to do at a very early age as a man is control your impulses. Right, which is crucial. It's crucial because, like, you get down to the lizard brain of things, right, and be that like be it with violence, with sex, with fear, like any of those like triggering body responses, you have to be able to control that. And I have always found that, especially when I'm in a manic state, I feel like that need for control diminishes, like that self-imposed restriction I've given myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's like we've talked about before, the limiters.
Limiters. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. And so all that shit's just out there running rampant. You got the hypersexuality when you're manic.
Mm-hmm.
You combine that with the kind of societal idea of masculinity, where a guy needs to be racking up notches on his bedpost.
Oh yeah.
Like if you're a man, like that's one of the ways you measure that you're a man.
Exactly.
How many chicks have you slept with?
How many chicks you banged, dude?
Yeah. How many chicks and how many real chicks you banged?
None of those fantasy novel chicks that you're talking about in your mind.
The blow up doll does not count. Her name is Tina. She has feelings.
Exactly. It's 2023, baby. Don't yuck anybody's yum at this point.
Yeah. One of the reasons I wanted to talk about this topic, it may seem a little out of left field for some of our audience, but as we get more into this, men don't discuss mental health. Men who experience mental health issues bottle it up. They see it as a weakness. They don't talk about it to anyone, and this is why 75% of all suicides are men.
Yep. Yeah. I feel like repression is a huge part of a man's toolbox in how to deal with anything like this. It's funny, I was talking to my therapist last week and talking about, various mental illnesses and how some people are are certainly born with them, and others develop over time. And a huge compounding factor that can be repression, right?
Yeah.
Like if you sit there and you are told, stop being who you are, stop being who you are, stop being who you are. Like I have friends, I have friends who are gay who come from a place where they were not felt safe coming out.
Yeah.
And they went through massive stages of depression because they were denying who they were for an extended periods of time. And if it's something, for lack of a better term, tangible, like your base sexuality, right? Like denying your base sexuality, I can't even imagine being a closeted gay man. That must be very difficult. And, God, good luck to anyone out there who's still grappling with that. But there reaches a point where you either give in or you don't, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to backtrack a bit because I feel like I'm not saying this very well, and I don't want it to come across.
It's because you're not drinking scotch tonight.
We have so many scars, all of us, from our childhood that have affected us slowly over the years and have built up to the point where it has caused us mental distress, which could heavily influence our mental illness. And we don't even necessarily know what they all are.
Yeah. That's one thing that's been coming out a lot in therapy is, for me anyway, is all the shit I experienced as a kid that I had convinced myself I dealt with.
Right.
I was like, oh, that was life. It was normal for me. I dealt with it. And I just kept shoving it down and shoving it down. Well, and then when I had kids, it all started bubbling up. And I kept trying to push it down and push it down and push it down. And then boom, last year, it exploded everywhere.
Well, and because
it's like, here's my trauma. Every scar I have ripped open, blood spraying like an anime, all over the place. And unfortunately, everybody I was surrounded by, who were in my life at the time was just like, oh my God, we got Brad's blood all over us.
The problem is that's the only way you know how to deal with it is to push it down and to repress it.
Yeah. Because that's what we're told a man does.
That's what a man does. Like, you're not going to talk about how you feel.
Right.
Especially if it's not tangible. If it's not a situation where, like, I broke my arm, so it hurts. If it's something instead of like, I don't feel like I can think clearly and I don't feel like getting out of bed, then you're just being lazy and, just fucking drink a cup of coffee and snap out of it.
Yeah.
Right?
I am doing things that are completely out of character for me. I don't know why I'm doing them. They freak me out. I'm hurting the people around me. Well, just don't do them.
You're just being crazy.
Yeah.
You're being crazy, man.
Man up.
Man up. And
Yeah.
it's funny because women are naturally more empathetic than men. I believe that.
Right.
And because of that, I think it's a lot more socially acceptable for them to talk about their feelings.
Yeah.
Either with each other or with men, right? But you wonder why the divorce rate is so high in this country. And I guarantee you a huge reason for it is just women want to be connected with their husband, right? Or their significant other. And that man is incapable of connecting with their emotions. They're incapable of voicing how they feel or
acknowledging.
Or even acknowledging, right? So it comes out in the two ways that men know how to deal with it, right? They either get violent or they shove it down and just put up a wall, which is even higher.
Which might eventually lead to a violent outburst.
Right.
My wife always says about me, I have a very long fuse, but it's attached to a giant fucking keg.
Sure.
Of dynamite, not of beer.
Look, I mean...
But that could work too. I don't know. That's a big keg of beer.
It was pretty sweet. I mean, it was a long fuse, but it was worth it.
I used to have a lot of anger issues when I was young. A lot. And when I say young, I don't even mean like teenage years. I mean, I probably didn't deal with it until I was like 30 years old when I finally got a handle on it. But even now, I can keep my calm for a long time. Mm-hmm. But if somebody just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing and hammering me and hurting me and coming at me with all this, eventually there's going to be an outburst. Right. It's not a conscious outburst. Mm-hmm. It feels like that pressure starts in your chest and continues to build and radiate outward until it fills your limbs. And the only thing that can alleviate the pressure is for one of those limbs to just fire off in some direction.
Yep.
You know, so you put your fist through a door, you smack a lamp across the room, you know, you do some stupid shit that unfortunately is probably going to scare the hell out of whoever's with you at the time. But it's because you don't deal with this, and you're like, I'm not going to let myself get angry. I'm going to stay calm. I'm going to push all this shit down. I'm a man. I shouldn't get hurt.
Right.
This shouldn't be hurting me right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just builds and builds and builds, and then boom, you explode.
Right, and you sit there, and if you think about it from like a bipolar standpoint, you are sitting there and you're detached, right? You are either in a depressed state where you're like, this is just what the world is giving me. This is what the world is giving me. I hate it. It's hitting me. It's knocking me down and down and down and down until you physically can't take it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you go manic. And you burst.
Yeah.
And there is no limiters anymore, which is where I feel like that punching the wall comes from, right? Because you have sat there and you for the longest time, you've been like, nope, repress it. Nope, don't deal with it. Look the other way. Take it. And don't talk about it, because if you talk about it, that's weakness, which is only going to bring more judgment and more hatred and more like negative feelings that are like crushing you down.
Yeah.
Right? So you're not dealing with it this whole time until eventually you snap, because we all have a breaking point.
Yeah. Like,
I don't care who you are, like, you have a breaking point. And if, God forbid, you haven't found it yet, because when you do, you're going to be a Brad powder keg, which is just going to explode. Mm-hmm. And it's terrifying. Honestly, it scares me, because that's the other really hard thing for me about it, is because neither one of us, in my opinion, you can correct me if I'm wrong, are aggressive people.
Yeah, like not in a negative sense.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, I'm aggressive in the fact of like, oh, I want to accomplish this thing with my work.
Yes. But you don't feel like you have to impose yourself on another person to accomplish something. No. Right? So to reach that state is scary for me.
Yeah.
Because the other part of it is we've both trained. Like, we're both trained. Like,
and that's actually one of the other reasons I wanted to talk about this, is because I found it interesting. We touched on this in one episode and kind of blew past it, but it kind of stuck in my head, is that both you and I have struggled with bipolar in our life, even when we didn't know we had it, and we both got into fighting.
Yep.
And I find that kind of interesting, is this idea, you know, like you talked about, like you're young, you're kind of searching for what it means to be a man. Mm-hmm. And those are the two things. It's like notches on the bedpost and beating the shit out of some other dude.
Yep.
You know? And so that's what you gravitate towards. One of my first long-term jobs was bouncing at a nightclub, specifically for that reason. Mm-hmm. Is I was like, I need to get into some fights. You know?
That'll make me a man.
That'll make me a man. So first guy I ever had to throw out. It was I think like the Misfits were playing or something.
Yeah, like, Misfits.
Yeah, like
nice.
I'm stationed at the back door of the club, and this other security guy brings this kid over. He's like 19, snuck in, was drinking, and the drinking age in Tennessee was 21, and so, you know, take this guy out. So like I take this kid down the back stairs out of the building into this alley, and the whole time he's like, man, come on, man, this is my favorite band. Can't you let me stay? And I'm like, I'm sorry, man, I'm just doing my job. And so I take him down, walk him into the alley. I start walking back up the stairs, and he waits until I get back up like halfway up the stairs, and he's like, you fucking cocksucker. And he starts chucking rocks at me. This kid had never make it in the majors. The rocks are like bouncing off the walls and stuff. But I was like, you little shit. Right. So, little shit. He was the same age as me at the time. You know, so I walk down into the alley and I pop him around and I get him in a chokehold. Mm-hmm. Kick his feet out from under him and I choke him out. I never choked somebody out before. Mm-hmm. Like just in training, they tap. Yeah. So I choke this kid out and he crumples. Yeah. Like it's like a rag doll. He flops. Yeah. And so I'm standing here in the alley at night, like Misfits metal music playing, you know, like, I got something to say. I killed a baby today. And I'm like, oh my God, I killed this guy. Oh God. Oh God. And I'm looking around and I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? So I pick the kid up and I carry him over to a dumpster.
Oh no, Brad.
I'm 19. I don't know what I'm doing.
Dumpster.
And I was like, I'm just going to leave him in a dumpster. So like I'm carrying him on my shoulder, and he starts coming to. He's like, "Ugh," and so I'm like, "Oh, thank God he's alive." So I go to set him on his feet, but he's not completely come to yet. So he just goes thump over on his head, and I'm like, "You okay, kid?" And he's like, and I smack him in the face a couple times. He's like, "What?" Yeah, and I'm like, "All right." And then I hightail it back inside.
You know, my parents got me into martial arts early. Partially because I have a big mouth and it got punched a lot. Yeah. No, but I think the other reason was I had this energy and this like lack of focus, and they didn't know what to do with it, right? Yeah. So they threw me into boxing and karate. And one of the wonderful things about martial arts is the discipline it instills in you, right? And one of the things that's reinforced over and over and over again is you are learning how to hurt people. You are learning how to hurt people. And if there ever comes a time for you to use that skill, then use it. Don't hold back. Use it. But up until that point, cap it. Like, you got to remember that this person talking shit to you in the Misfits alley does not know what you know. Does not know what you know. So unless he is seriously threatening you,
he was chucking rocks.
Oh no, I'm not saying you were completely in your right to dumpster that kid. I'm not saying that, but it's that whole idea. But again, it's that tampering down, right? It's that restraining it.
And what's interesting about that, like just talking about it in terms of masculinity, is when you know how to fight, and especially as you get older and you get into say like weight training,
sure,
and you're like you walk in someplace and you're like, I'm the strongest guy in this room, and I know how to fight. The need for it goes away.
Sure.
It's something about building up confidence, maybe in the lizard brain.
Right.
Like it's not even standard confidence. It's that animal part of you being like, okay, I know I'm good. I can take care of myself.
I'm safe. Yeah, I'm safe. The people I love are safe. Yeah.
That's one thing that's weird. And I don't want to get off into a political thing here by any means, but that I noticed being from East Tennessee that has changed in gun culture. Is like with my grandfather when I was a kid, he kept a .357 Magnum in his truck in the glove compartment. We never saw that gun. He never talked about that gun.
Right, but it was
there just in case.
Right.
Now everybody's like, hey, man, look at my toy and blah, blah, blah. And they treat him like toys when I go back. But the thing I've noticed is it's become a way to buy your masculinity. It's like, you could put in the blood, sweat, and tears required to go to the gym and get strong, or to step into a boxing ring and throw some punches, or you could go to Walmart and spend $300 and buy some masculinity.
And I wonder. Let me ask you this: how much of that is also a component of, or how much is there the factor of like looking for a sense of community and connection with other men, right? Because actually connecting with another man is considered, in some respects, emasculine. Right? Like I need a friend. I need someone to talk to. I need someone to hang out with. And if I were to just approach another man and say that to them, they'd be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah. Now, on the other hand, if I invite Brad over and we sit on the couch and watch football on Sunday, for 4 to 6 hours in each other's company, and, without looking at each other, we might say a few things. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
That's absolutely fine. It's like, you can sit there and be like, hey, look at this. Let's go clean guns in my garage for 2 hours, and that's or fishing. Like any number of these things that allow you to bridge the gap between men. Yeah, it's frustrating because it's not that I don't enjoy fishing. I do like fishing, and football not anymore for me. Too many head injuries, but I enjoy these things. I don't think we should need them in order to connect with another man.
Yeah. Men can only connect through an activity.
Yep.
That is a good point.
Right.
And that again comes back to we're told that's a masculine. We're told, we can't talk, we can't open up, we can't share. So much of that is cultural. Our idea in America of what it means to be a man. Basically, I talk about this with a lot of stuff. Our fucked up ideas on like sex and things. Our problem as all of our problems as a country comes back to the fact we were founded by Puritans.
Sure.
Thanksgiving's great. I love some turkey.
I do love Thanksgiving.
Yep. Pilgrims were the biggest assholes that ever lived on the earth.
You and your stupid shoes. Yeah.
Your buckles on your hat. No, but like that being the basis of our culture really did a number on us. And then so much of our culture now, that we have that as the foundation, is based on not even real cowboys, Western movies.
Right. John Wayne.
Which were the first movies ever, like the silent era. You go back to 1915, Tom Mix, the stoic Western, cowboy hero who nothing rattled him. This guy, he never felt pain, etc. And that's been a part of cinematic history ever since. And what is cinema if not our modern mythos?
Yeah, agreed.
And so we grow up with that. We get that idea, and then it goes through periods where there's other stuff thrown in. I mean, anybody who grew up on action movies from the 80s and 90s, there's this like crazy hyper masculine.
Oh man, I was rewatching Predator the other day, which I love that movie. But there's a moment when Jesse the Body Ventura, who's in that movie, he's they invade the camp where the rebels are or whatever, and there's a guy who's like up above, and Shane Black comes running over to him, and he looks at Jesse, and he goes, "Oh my God, you're bleeding," and Jesse's response is, "I ain't got time to bleed." And I'm like, that's not no. I mean, I think that's hilarious. Or even the start of that movie where what's his name? Oh, the other lead apart from
Carl Weathers.
Thank you, Carl Weathers. He comes, Arnold Schwarzenegger walks in, he's like, "Dylan, you son of a bitch," and they like clap hands, and there's that like moment of them just like struggling against each other, and I'm like, these guys are probably really close friends, but this is the only way they can show it. God forbid they hug.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like...
On a side note, did I tell you the other day about the weird manic moment I had in my car where House of Pain's Jump Around came on, and for some reason I sang it like Arnold Schwarzenegger? I was like, "Jump around! Jump around! Jump up, get down!"
He could have had a great recording career. He just went a different direction, you guys,
Enjoying BatShit? Please like, subscribe, and share it on social media. If you have someone you think may need to hear it, we encourage you to share it with them and to start your own conversation about mental health.
I think a lot about Rowdy Harrington's cinematic masterpiece, Roadhouse.
Oh, that is the epitome of masculinity.
That
right
movie.
there.
Okay, so you got tits.
Yep.
You got monster trucks. You got dudes getting their throats ripped out. You got knife fights, gun fights. I mean, you got the Jeff Healey band playing behind chicken wire. That is the most masculine movie ever made, even with Patrick Swayze's perm.
Right. Because you could make that masculine.
My favorite weird line in that movie is when he's about to fight like the villain next to the pond or whatever. And the guy goes, "I used to fuck guys like you in prison." And it's like, whoa!
Wait a minute, hold on.
This took a turn.
Oh, man. But then you wrap all that back around to how, you're coming up, you're watching this, you're learning this as a man, that this is what being a man is. Like, these are the activities you participate in. This is how you treat women. This is how you treat other men. And then you go on to raise men.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think why I think about this a lot lately is because it's not just, me dealing with what it means to be a man. I think, for the most part, I am a man.
Congratulations, Brent.
I did it. I did it, guys.
He got his card.
I'm a man.
Yep.
Like the pursuits I've been involved, getting into powerlifting and strongman and boxing and, he was trained at shoot a box and, all this stuff. And, we've talked before about just taking responsibility for our actions.
Yeah.
These things, I provide for my family. I think that's old school of me. I feel like that's something a man does. A man works a job. And a man provides. And I don't mean he has to be the breadwinner. The woman can be the breadwinner, but I think the man contributes.
Yeah, well, that's just it. You're part of a team, right?
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
part of a team, and
exactly.
your significant other, your spouse, that's the teammate that you have.
Yeah.
And when you are not contributing in some way, shape, or form, then you're not being. I guess that's just it, though, right? That idea of being a man, because if it's the other way around, and it's the woman who is not contributing, you never hear the phrase, "You're not being a woman."
Yeah.
You don't hear that.
You never hear "woman up."
Right?
There's all these things implicit in our language, like the language we use about like you are failing at being a man,
right?
And yeah, like you said, you don't hear that with women. Or
Right.
at least I don't. I don't know, ladies. You can correct me if maybe you guys
please. I mean,
you guys get together and you're like, oh, she's definitely not having that big pussy energy today, or whatever.
Oh my God, the big dick energy. I hate. Oh my God, it's
But-
but that whole idea of like being a man, right?
Yeah.
Like becoming a man. What quantifies
Yeah.
that?
And that's why men struggle when they get laid off.
Sure.
Or they lose their job, because that's part of being a man. A man works.
Right. And
You know?
then, and the twisted part about it, right, is once one of those dominoes start falling, all the other things that we as a society attribute to men, like things like sexual virility,
Right.
strength, your hair, like if stress, the loss of a job, the loss of a loved one can start knocking all of those dominoes over.
A lot of men develop depression after getting laid off.
Yeah.
Especially if you're working, say, a trade that you've worked your whole life.
Oh, God, yeah.
I am I'm an electrician.
Mm-hmm.
I work for this company. I've worked here for 30 years. Now I get laid off. I can't find another electrician job. Yeah, maybe I could be a clerk at, Walmart or whatever. But that's not what I've done. That's not my identity. And men fall into depression.
Well, because a lot of men, I feel like they define themselves by their work.
Yeah.
Right? They define them, which I think is really twisted. Like you have, if you are married with children, you don't define yourself as a father. You don't define yourself as a husband. Mm-hmm. Your first definition of yourself is like, well, I am an electrician.
Yeah.
And this is where my worth lies.
Yeah.
And as soon as that worth is taken away, they start sinking in upon themselves.
Well, because so much of our culture revolves around how much money do you make?
Sure.
Sure. Do you make money?
Right. Well,
you can get into like hustle culture and how people are killing
Sure.
themselves and blah, blah, blah. But I think that's one of the reasons why that identity comes into play.
Sure. I also think, though, that it's like you are achieving something when you walk into work, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you're pushing a piece of paper or you're tightening a lug nut, right? There is a beginning and an end to that action.
Yeah.
Like you are accomplishing something.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, when you're talking about a lot of the things that are not associated with masculinity, like dealing with emotions or repression or mental illness, there is no end.
Yeah.
There is not a way to accomplish that.
Yeah.
Like there's no like finish line. And that's, I think, even harder for men. Because if I sat there and I said to you, hey, Brad, you can either go to the gym, right, and lift that really heavy weight 10 times, and you'll feel good about it. Or you can sit there for 3 years dealing with your emotions and talking to a therapist.
Yeah.
Like, who is going to pick the option B?
Yeah.
Men? No, very few men. It takes a lot, and I think that's why it's really hard for men to go see therapists, because what you're admitting is not only do you have problems and that you need to talk about it, but that this is going to be a long journey that never truly has an ending.
Yeah, because we're very goal-oriented. And you can say that's biological. Like, heightened levels of testosterone tend to create laser focus.
Sure.
So you can say part of that is biological. That we're so goal oriented, but I think part of it's societal,
of course.
Also.
Yeah,
and you get into, like we were saying earlier, like now I've got these 2 little boys that I'm raising, and I'm trying to teach them. I'm trying to parse like what are the good traits of masculinity in our culture I can impart on them, and how can I break away from the negative ones?
Right.
And it's difficult because especially with young kids, like one of the things I struggle with is kids go through a period where they whine.
Sure.
They whine about stuff. And it's like, on one hand, I want my sons to know like, hey, if something's bothering you, like you can express that and you can talk to me about it. But then on the other hand, I got that knee-jerk reaction where I'm like, a man doesn't fucking whine.
Yeah.
And it's like, so you try to balance that stuff, and it's hard,
Yeah. It's also interesting now being 2023 and people are really starting to accept or start to explore like non-binary identification.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what it means to just throw the whole idea of gender out the window. right?
Yeah.
And that's fascinating because neither one of us are in that headspace, right?
No,
but I can also understand the people who want to take, like, being a man is toxic as fuck. It's toxic. Like, so
some of it.
The way
Yeah.
it is treated, the way we have been brought up to believe what masculinity is, I feel like a lot of it is toxic.
Because there are a lot of positive traits. I think,
of course there
like
are.
we've talked about before, the urge that we have to protect people.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, to me, that's positive masculinity.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I protect the people around me.
But that's not what's focused on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and that's not what's being like emphasized in culture. Right. The only way someone protects someone in modern cinema is by killing or beating the shit out of somebody else. Right.
Yeah.
And I understand heightened stakes. I get why they do that. And I'm not saying all elements of masculinity are toxic. They're not, because you'd have to say the same thing about femininity, which is just not true.
Yeah.
But I do understand people who are looking at what it means to be a man in society and not liking what it looks like and taking a step back from it.
Yeah.
And taking a step back from it.
I think, though, one of the problems with that, and I'm strictly speaking here, again, whatever journey you're on, if you're non-binary, if we're speaking as two heterosexual males.
Two cis white males.
Yeah, if you're gay, if you're trans, like, everybody's got their different journey, and those things are gonna come to play in a different way for everyone. For me, as a straight white male, which, by the way, on a side note, one of my big pet peeves lately are these, like, MRA types. Men's rights activists.
What are men's rights activists?
Who are like, straight white males are being shit on in this country.
Oh, my God. Yeah, no, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I live in Los Angeles, which is, quote, the woke capital of the world, unquote. As a straight white male, I have never been discriminated against.
No way. No way. And
like, so you guys bitching about this shit in Tennessee, like, who's discriminating against you?
Yeah, dial it down. Dial it down.
That was my little side rant.
Side note. Side rant with Brad.
Yeah. But as a straight white male, that to me, it's like trying to parse that, because there's so much, I think, good that comes with masculinity.
Yes.
But I think when we talk about it societally, is that a word? Societally?
Yeah, sure.
Socially.
It is now.
Societally. That you can't also remove the role of women in that. You know, we talked in a previous episode about, for instance, a friend I had who I had opened up to, and her response was basically like, I don't like a man being vulnerable to me.
Sure.
And so the reason I say this, and I'm not putting the onus for all this shit on you ladies, obviously 90% of this is us.
It's
our cross to bear, and we got to figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah.
But when we as a society say, hey, we want men to open up, and a man opens up to you, and that's something that you say you want, you need to be receptive.
Sure.
Because if we get that one rejection, we're folding back in on ourselves, and it's going to become even more toxic.
That is the hardest, that is one of the hardest things for me personally, is when I get that blocker that comes up, like you said, like that one person who's like, well, no. Like you said, you shut down.
Yeah.
You just go right back into yourself, and any effort and work that you had done to reach that point just gets obliterated.
Yeah.
And that's something else that we as men have to be able to deal with, or learn how to deal with. Like, being vulnerable doesn't mean you're vulnerable once, and if it doesn't work out, you're never vulnerable again.
Yeah.
Right? You have to learn to live in that world.
But we're never taught how to deal with hurt.
Yeah.
So when you do open up and somebody does that, it hurts even more.
Right.
And then you're like, I don't know how to deal with this. I'm just going to shut down.
Yeah, I'm just going to get out. I'm going to remove myself from the situation.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because, again, it's goal-orientated. So if you open up to someone, you want something to happen. Right? Like, you want to get a return, right, from your investment, for lack of a better term.
Right.
And if someone does not give you the return you want on your investment, then why did you do it?
Yeah.
Like, why did you do it? You can make the argument, if you're empathetic and emotionally intelligent, that, hey, you know what you're doing? You're starting a dialogue, and you're going to start to grow, and maybe you won't get what you can't always get what you want, but you might get what you need.
Ooh, that'd be a good song.
I should write that song.
Yeah.
I'm going to write that song. have big lips. But it's like that's what you're doing. You're starting a conversation. You're growing as an individual. We again, we're like, well, we need this reaction, this result. You're not going to get it.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm never trying that again.
Yeah.
After that, what's an easier way to do it? Is when I first started dating women, right? I remember
after you were dating dogs,
right? Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I don't have a good dog joke there. I'm really disappointed in myself.
Is there a good dog joke?
I don't know if there is.
Yeah.
But when I started dating women, I remember not knowing how to do that. Like not knowing how to be myself. I knew how to do that with female friends.
Yeah.
Right? But to do that with like a female sexual partner, I didn't know and I didn't succeed at it.
That's interesting because I feel like manic me is like that. That when I go manic, I'm putting up a facade. Like, this is the personality I think you'll like.
Well, and that's just it.
I think you'll find this guy sexy.
And that's just it. Like,
I'm going to watch a bunch of fucking alpha male videos on YouTube. And there's this one guy I came across, by the way, who cracks me up. He's like, I forget who he is. But he constantly refers to women as spicy senoritas.
Oh,
like,
Jesus Christ.
If you want to attract the spicy senorita.
Oh, my God. But see, that's just it. Like, you sit there and you don't know. You're like, okay, this is what I want. This is how I know how to go get it. So I'm going to try this. And then you get rejected.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, that tactic doesn't work.
And that's also a conversation that men don't have with their children.
Right. Men
are not taught. I mean, of course, like I said, my father was in prison. I did not have a father figure growing up. But even for people who did, you have the sex talk. You're like, here's the mechanics of it.
Yep.
But there's no talk about like, hey, here's how to date. Here's how to ask a girl out. Here's how to handle rejection.
Here's how to connect with a woman.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what it really comes down to. I remember I had this epiphany not that long ago, like 5 or 6 years ago. I remember thinking back on being in high school and college and like talking to women and asking women out and getting rejected by those women, right? Mm-hmm. And my first reaction every single time that happens is something's wrong with me. I did something wrong. They want nothing to do with me.
Right.
Leave them alone. Run away.
Right.
I never thought, like, what if they're having a bad day?
Yeah.
What are they going through, right? Because that comes back again to the empathy that we're not taught to
have. What if
have.
they're not into guys with dark hair?
Right.
Has nothing to do with me. That's just I'm not their type.
Maybe they just got like a crazy bad phone call and you're coming up being like, hey, you want to go see a movie? And they're like, no, not at all. Yeah. And again, we are goal oriented. We are going to pursue this goal. This goal is to get this woman to go to the movies with me. You have attempted this one course of action. It has not worked.
Yeah.
Right? So you either run away or you develop a system where you can put yourself out there for things like, do you want to go to the movies? And not have to worry about any of the repercussions of failing at that action.
Yeah.
Now, that could be Manic Brad, who's just like, I've developed like the system for spicy senoritas. Or it could be like if you're over analytical Adam and you ask a girl out and she says no, then, then something's wrong with her. Yeah. Well, like something's wrong with her, right? Like, I'm like, what the hell, man? Forget that girl.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? Like, talking about developing that personality while manic and kind of putting on this face and being a different person. Being Actor Brad.
Actor Brad, right? Who's available for projects if you have any in the works.
I'll send you my headshots. God damn it. But you actually end up, the irony of it is, the type of woman you want to be with, you push away.
Yeah.
And the only women, you may be very lucky with women. You may get put a lot of notches on your bedpost.
Oh, yeah.
It's nobody you actually want to hang out with.
No, of course not. Because you have to become someone else who's not you to meet these women.
Yeah.
Right? It's why I personally think, I give a lot of credit to anyone who's on dating apps, because I met my wife, thank God, prior to, there was OkCupid, but other than that, there really weren't dating apps. Because you have to put on that front. You have to put on the Actor Brad, probably actually Actor Brad headshots if you were to do it onto Tinder or whatever, and project that image, right? Because you can't come onto those websites and be off. in any way, like vulnerable.
Yeah,
and,
you can't be vulnerable. You can't be like, I'm a little awkward and kind of funny.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to be like, here's a shirtless pic of me on a boat,
right,
with $1,000 in cash in my hand that I'm fanning myself with.
And ladies, I am in no way saying you aren't interested in awkward, funny men. Of course you are, but
when you're scrolling through 1,000 profiles,
and you're just looking at the picture,
yeah,
right, you're just looking at the picture, and you see, like those guys who put on that air, that actor Brad air, those are the ones.
God damn it, this has become a byword for everything I hate. And it's true.
And it's so true.
Fucking hate actor Brad.
But it's easier to associate. It's like when we are writing, when you write something, when you write a screenplay, when you write a book, when you write anything, you want to paint the picture for the audience as quickly as possible.
Right.
So that you can stop worrying about it and just get on to the meat of the story.
Yeah.
Right? And, a lot of that comes across as like, honestly demeaning in some respects.
Yeah.
But for instance, if you want to describe like the love interest of the lead of your show, you can describe them as beautiful, sexy, and smart. Doesn't matter if they're male or female. Who cares? Beautiful, sexy, smart. Done.
Yeah.
Because you can go, got it. I kind of understand what they're going for as the writer, that this is going to be like someone the lead is interested in dating or sleeping with or talking to, and they're going to be a challenge because they're intelligent, like all of these things, right? But at the end of the day, that's kind of demeaning to just be like, oh, so a woman has to be like beautiful, sexy, like. But at the
that's a common bad screenwriting trope. Is you introduce the actress and the description is something like she's beautiful, but she doesn't know it.
Yeah. But at the same time, once you get that quick descriptor out, you can move on to the rest of it. Yeah. So when you're looking at these Tinder profile pictures, get that descriptor out there. Be like, this is what I look like on my best day, when I'm fully confident, when everything's going right.
Yeah.
And then if we actually meet the person, then, maybe you can start getting into some of that awkward, funny, goofy Brad. Yeah. Right? But actor Brad is the one that they want to initially talk to.
Yeah.
And we learned that, again, at a young age.
Yeah.
That being sensitive and open is harder. It's a lot harder. Now, the connections that you make when you're being sensitive and open and empathetic and not hyper-masculine are going to be better. They're going to be more true.
Yeah.
They're going to be deeper. But they're going to take more time, more effort, and more risk, and more vulnerability. All things that we, as men, run away from.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not good at it. Now, that being said, to any guys out there looking for dating advice, don't dump all that shit on a woman immediately. Like, wait until like
date 3.
3 months in.
Oh, I was gonna say date 3. See, and that's why I've been out of the game too long.
You can be a little vulnerable, but yeah, I mean.
But that's the other. That's the other.
The women in your life are not there to be your emotional support dog.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Like, you have to learn how to deal with your emotions, man.
Yeah.
Like, you have to. Because if you do not, you will never be a partner.
Yeah.
You will never be a man. You will never be able to pull your weight and contribute to the relationship because you are not looking inward.
Yeah, you'll never be a good husband. You'll never be a good father.
Nope.
You'll never be good to your mistress.
Nope, exactly. And, if you can't be good to your mistress, I mean
that's
what are we doing here, everybody?
That's the number one criteria for rating a man, I think. How do you treat your mistress?
How do you treat your mistress?
Join us next week for another episode from 1955.
Hey, I want to say thank you, by the way, to any and everyone who's been listening to this podcast, who's been sharing this podcast with their friends and their family and the loved ones in their life who might need to hear it. We're so blessed to have you doing that, and we can't say thank you enough. Please continue to tell people about this podcast, like, subscribe, rate us on these podcasting sites. Honestly, Brad and I spend a good 30 minutes every day texting each other back and forth, being like, is this how you podcast?
Yeah.
Do you podcast like this? Like, we were talking today about merchandise, and we're like, you can merchandise podcasts?
Yeah, we were like, what would we do? I guess lethargic salmon shirts?
Yeah. But at the end of the day, what we want to do is start a conversation.
Oh,
That's
God.
all.
Oh, God. We're going to do Actor Brad merch. Aren't we?
We are, yeah. Oh, that'd be great. Who wants Actor Brad? Bobblehead Actor Brad. I'd buy 3.
Motherfucker.
But the idea is we want to start a conversation, and we want to keep the conversation going, and we want more people to be part of it. So please share the podcast, rate the podcast, get it heard, because it seems like people are liking it and liking us talking about things.
Yeah, and one thing that's been kind of touching to me is the amount of people who have messaged us that they thought that they might have had a problem, and then they listened to our podcast and have decided to go seek professional help.
Yeah.
And again, especially when we're talking men, where these are conversations that don't come up. It's not considered a masculine thing to see a therapist, to talk to a psychiatrist about your mental health. And I think, I don't want to get up on I don't even know what the
soapbox.
No, I don't know what the analogy I was going to say is. Something about being full of ourselves on a high horse. I don't know. Who's got all these fucking high horses? Get a low horse, man. I'm going to get up on a low horse here.
Okay, do it. Pony it. Shetland pony.
And just say that I do think a lot of people need to hear stuff like this.
Yeah.
They need to hear that you're not alone, that it's okay to get help, especially if you're a guy and you're struggling with all this masculine bullshit.
Yeah. Do not be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to have thoughts that you don't know how to express. So you have to find someone to talk to.
And however you need to deal with that. I had Adam had recommended his therapist to me. His therapist sounds great. I specifically wanted to speak to a woman because a lot of this bullshit. I'll admit that, but I feel more comfortable opening up to a woman. So I found a female therapist. So even if you're out there struggling with this, like think about it. Think about the options that you have that'll make you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
To seek help.
Yeah.
And then get that help.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to get better. Trust us. It will only get worse.
It gets infinitely worse.
Yeah.
And, there's a reason that a lot of divorces happen in their 40s and 50s because men reach a breaking point.
Yeah.
Like there's only so much we can shoulder before all of our mechanisms break down and we're just, yeah.
My bad life destroying episodes did not happen until I was 43 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Some people get diagnosed with this when they're young. They have bad stuff off the gate. But like we said, we repress all this shit.
Yep.
And it sits there and it just bubbles and bubbles and bubbles. And then one day it's going to explode.
Yeah.
And if you don't think that that's you repressing this stuff, that one day it will explode on you, that just means when it does, it's going to be that much bigger.
Yeah.
So go get help.
Go get help, please.